What's going on, everybody? C4 here, continuing with this 7-round mock draft series here on Beast Mode TV. Today we're going to be looking at the Los Angeles Rams. Don't have a first-round pick, so it's going to be extra difficult to try to address their needs. They're a team that needs lots of assessing and lots of addressing. We're going to try our best. They do have a lot of picks, but they just obviously don't have the first-rounder. So last year, the Rams went 4-12. They had the 32nd overall offense and the 9th-ranked defense. Their MVP, I had a tie between Aaron Donald, who everyone knows is one of the best, if not the best, interior defensive lineman in the NFL, Fletcher Cox, and Johnny Hekker. Johnny Hekker as a punter. Pretty ridiculous when you start talking about a punter being your team's best player, but he was an absolute weapon, man. This guy here posted numbers of punts inside the 20. He had like the long, he was like near top of the list at every punting category. So you guys show respect there, especially for how bad that offense was. He was helping out the defense a lot by pinning the opposing team's offense in terrible positions. So their needs before free agency, there was a few. I had offensive guard, wide receiver, corner, tight end, center, tackle, pretty much everyone on the offensive line. So let's see what they did in free agency. So they tagged Trumaine Johnson, which was $16 million against the cap. I give that an F. That seemed like a panic move and a real example of their inability to negotiate a long-term contract with him. It's the second year he's been franchise tagged. Trumaine Johnson's he's not like an elite corner, but he's not a bad corner by any means. But $16 million, that's ridiculous. I don't know necessarily if I heard rumors they're trying to trade him and all that stuff, so I don't really know. I haven't heard much out of the Rams camp that they're going to be able to extend him on a long-term deal. They signed Andrew Whitworth on a 3-year, $36 million deal. I'll give that a B+. Clearly, this is like the biggest definition of a Band-Aid signing, but they need help on that offensive line because that offense is going to run and move through Todd Gurley, and their offensive line was terrible last year. As a Todd Gurley fantasy owner, I didn't draft him in fantasy. I had him as a keeper from his rookie season. That offensive line was terrible, absolutely terrible. I mean, the passing offense did not help whatsoever. But signing Andrew Whitworth, who even though he's up there in age, still produces like a high-end tackle. If he could stay healthy, he's going to be a valuable starter for them next year, so that's good there. They signed Robert Woods, 5-year, $39 million, giving that a C+. He's a lot of upside, and I just think that's a lot of money for a guy that's never broke a 1,000-yard season. But he is an upgrade, I would think, over a Brian Quick or... I mean, even Kenny Britt. I think Robert Woods is similar to Kenny Britt, but he's a lot younger, so that's a decent deal. They released Lance Kendricks and freed up almost $4.5 million in cap. That's an A. He was pretty much obsolete in that offense. They released UG Sims, which freed up just over $3 million, giving that an A. He was kind of a rotational guy. They traded Will Hayes in the 7th round to Miami for a 6th round. I'll give that a C+, just because I don't see... William Hayes, even though he believes in like unicorns and doesn't think dinosaurs exist and shit, now they got to go with Ethan Westbrooks as a starting defensive end because they traded him. I don't really think Westbrooks is that much better, if better, than William Hayes. William Hayes is the kind of guy that can get you 7-8 sacks a season. Can Westbrooks do that? I don't necessarily know. And to do all that for a 6th rounder for a team that doesn't need to make, cap-saving moves, that was kind of surprising. They signed Kayvon Webster, 2-year, $8 million, giving that a C. They re-signed Greg Zuerlein, 3-year, around 6, close to $7 million, giving that a C+. He's one of the better kickers in the NFL. They signed Lance Dunbar on a 1-year, $3 million deal, giving that a C+. I think Dunbar's an upgrade over Benny Cunningham for your receiving back. And then they brought in Connor Barwin from the Philadelphia Eagles on a 1-year deal. Haven't got the exact figures of that deal, but that's good. That's good business right there. And for Wade Phillips, new outside 3-4. I mean, maybe that's why they got rid of Will Hayes, because they don't see him playing in a 3-4, which is understandable. But I mean, Connor Barwin, that's a great pickup right there. He's a 3-4 outside guy. Last time he played in the 3-4 defense, he had like 15 sacks. So hopefully he does well. He's a phenomenal guy off the field as well. And you guys get yourself a nice young gentleman there. So I think they did decent in free agency, to be completely honest with you. Threw a couple bucks around. I think they, if I was a Rams fan, I would have hoped they would have tried to address the offensive line a little bit more. But it is what it is. So let's look at what they did in 2016 before we jump into what they do in 2017, in my opinion, see if I can do better. So everyone knows they took Jared Goff with the first pick in the 1st round last season, and we all know how that worked out. Didn't play throughout the season. When he did play, he looked pretty bad. It is still kind of hard to judge him because the team around him was not really good. He had Todd Gurley was his only other weapon, and when your best weapon's a running back and your weakest asset is maybe your offensive line, it's just it's just an absolute shit show that you have to deal with there. For the Rams. So I don't think it's too early, way too early to consider Jared Goff a bust. He obviously did not look as good as Carson Wentz, but I think it's still too early. This year here will be a fine evaluation of I think Jared Goff. So then they didn't pick till the 4th round, where they got pick 110, Tyler Higbee, the tight end from Western Kentucky. He wasn't very productive, didn't see the field a whole lot here as a rookie. 11 receptions, 85 yards, and a touchdown. But I really like that pick. I think he was my sleeper tight end of this year's draft class. And everyone's ranting and raving this offseason that they're gonna think he can take the next big step to be a tight end 1 in this league. I think he definitely has the potential. I mean, last year he slipped in the draft because of some off the field shit that was pretty commendable. I'm pretty sure like he kicked the shit out of someone that did something to his girlfriend or something like that. But not in the mold of like a Joe Mixon or anything like that. So I think that's solid. Then their second, 4th round pick was Pharoh Cooper, the wide receiver from South Carolina. Again, another pick that I thought was decent. He finished with 14. I think he had like 400 all-purpose yards, 14 receptions. I think there's a lot of upside there for him to continue and to grow in this team. They had to forfeit their 5th round pick because it was a pick from the supplemental draft. I think that was Isaiah Battle from a year before. I'm not really looking at anything that says what that was, but I think that's what it was if I remember correctly. And then they finished the draft with 3 6th-round picks. They got Tamarick Hemingway, tight end from South Carolina State, Josh Forrest, a linebacker from Kentucky, and Mike Thomas, wide receiver from Southern Miss. So Mike Thomas wasn't a bad pick. He ran a pretty good 40 time last year, but, he only had 3 receptions, 37 yards. Wasn't too big important. They had Josh Forrest, linebacker from Kentucky. I actually really like that pick. I think he has some upside. He got injured, put on IR, but I think this guy can make a push to be more than just a special teamer. And then they got Tamarick Hemingway, who I have no idea who the hell that is, to be completely honest with you. And he had, I don't think he had recorded a single reception last season, according to his Wikipedia page, which is 99.9% accurate. So overall, the 2016 draft, I would say, was, looking back, pretty poor, to be completely honest. He didn't have the most picks. Obviously, not having a pick in the 2nd or 3rd round kind of stinks, or a 5th round pick. But, it all relies on Jared Goff, and they were unable to even get him to see the field until well past midseason, when the season was pretty much done for. So that's not a great sign of a draft. Let's see if we can do better here with our 7th round for 2017. Okay, so no 1st round pick, which again stings for the Rams. So hopefully Jared Goff pans out. But we don't pick till the 2nd round, pick 37, where I am addressing, in my opinion, the biggest need, which is offensive line. And I'm selecting Dion Dawkins, the offensive guard from Temple University, 6'4", 315 pounds, 5'1", 140, 26 reps on the bench press. Pro comparison is Joe Barksdale. I think that's a little bit of a slight at Dion Dawkins. I think Dion Dawkins has potential to be one of the top guards in this year's draft class. Pretty much solidified himself as a 2nd round pick. I don't think he's going to be those guys that creeps up. But in terms of his play style, really reminds me of Josh Garnett from Stanford. They're not necessarily the biggest guys. Garnett was closer to the 330 range than he was 315. But in terms of being just that physical starting guard that just loves to get after people in the run game, I think you could really see Dion Dawkins starting day 1 as the right guard for the LA Rams. Right now, it's Cody Weichman is your starting guard. I know they're moving Greg Robinson from left to right, or from left tackle to left guard. And then you have Roger Saffold. I assume that you're going to try to switch to right guard. But I don't think Greg Robinson can really cut it as a guard. He's been a bust through and through. I know he played a little bit better last year than he has in his previous 2 years in the NFL. But I would much certainly go with a guy like Dion Dawkins, who I personally think might be the sleeper guard of this year's draft class here in the 2nd round at pick 37. Yeah, I think that. Plus, he can play tackle. Worst case scenario, he's another guy that can play right tackle. Played a little bit of right tackle at Temple, so he has that versatility. If you don't see him being a necessarily starting guard, he's versatile. He is versatile, but he played left tackle, he played right tackle, played right guard. I think that's where he's going to be finding his home here in the NFL. Jumping to the 2nd round, pick 69 of the 3rd round. To all you kids out there. I'm going Chris Godwin, the wide receiver from Penn State, 6'1", 209 pounds, ran a 4.42 40, 19 reps on the bench press. He's a big-time player. I think with Chris Godwin, you have to really be look at his tape. He was kind of flying under the radar, and when he ran a good time, it seems like even Mike Mayock, who seems to know everything, was like, who the hell is this kid from Penn State? Watch his Rose Bowl, man. This guy here was a big-time receiving threat. Not the most accurate quarterback. He has a crazy, wacky, insane quarterback in Trace McSorley throwing the ball at Penn State. But he was able to make big plays more often than not. I think Chris Godwin here in the 3rd round adds a dimension to that offense that they're not going to get with their depth guys of Bradley Marquez and Mike Thomas. I definitely think based off the preseason, people are hoping Nelson Spruce and the rookie Pharoh Cooper can kind of carry out bigger roles in that offense, but I still think you have to get a guy that has a little bit more upside, a little bit more promise. And I think Chris Godwin could be a starting outside wide receiver with Tavon Austin working in the slot and Robert Woods opposing him on the other side. And getting that in the 3rd round, and I think this draft class for the wide receiver spot is fairly underrated. I think some teams are underrating it. or not some teams, but some draft sites, they're just like, oh, wide receiver's pretty weak this year. I think wide receiver is good for the first 3 rounds. It's just the top end. There's no elite screaming wide receivers, depending on if you believe on Corey Davis, Mike Williams, and John Ross. It might not be as strong as, obviously, looking back at like the 2014 class, 2013 class, but I think, like I said, Chris Godwin would be an excellent weapon to give Jared Goff in that offense. Jumping to the 4th round, the first of 2 picks, pick 112. I've been going with Josh Jones, this safety from NC State, 6'1", 220 pounds, the height, weight, speed animal from this year's draft class. 4'1", 40, 20 reps on the bench press, 37.5-inch vertical. This guy was a big-time beast. NFL comparison is Mike Mitchell, the Pittsburgh Steelers, who's doing his thing. But I think the only thing with him is obviously his technique and stuff definitely needs to be worked on. Not so much as everyone else. Like I think getting him in the 4th round, whereas you get other project players in the 6th round. I think he is not ready to start right away. Can contribute on special teams, but he needs to get better discipline. Which comes with technique. That's what happens when a guy relies on his athleticism a lot in college and can get away with a lot of things that you're not going to be able to get away with in the NFL. And I think there's plenty of upside here at the safety spot. I mean, they have Mo Alexander, who kind of had a breakout year. But outside of that, safety, TJ McDonald's gone. He got suspended. I don't think he'll be coming back as their starting strong safety, and I think that's what you can get with Josh Jones. He's the strong safety through and through, and add some competition there. I think it looks like on their depth chart they have Isaiah Johnson and LaMarcus Joyner, who I thought was more so of a nickel corner, but I could be wrong. So yeah, competition for strong safety in the 4th round. That's good value. Down to the 2nd and 4th round pick 141. I'm getting another wide receiver, and it's Malachi Dupree from LSU, 6'2", 195 pounds, ran a 4.5 240, had a very good vertical of 39.5 inches, good broad jump, 135 inches. You know, it's another LSU type wide receiver, big targeted guy who had pretty terrible quarterback play through his career there at LSU. This is the last wide receiver we're going to add because I still think you need to build up that core because what they had last year was not good enough. They lost Kenny Britt, so I think you need to continue to add guys because I don't really think you can classify Tavon Austin as a wide receiver, to be completely honest. He's more of an offensive weapon mold. I think he had like his most production when he was getting the ball to the backfield. So he's a gimmicky type player. So continue to get some guys that can just line up on the outside, and you know that that's where they're going to be. They're not going to do anything else funky, and they'll see if they can make some plays for Jared Goff. But I think right now you can walk in, be the 4th wide receiver on that Rams team, and getting that in the 4th round. You know what it is. The word of the mock drafts. Great value. It's great. It's huge value. Absolutely huge. It's the best value you're going to ever get, ever. Guarantee. But yeah, Sean McVay wants a stable of good wide receivers. That's what he had pretty much at during his time with the Washington Redskins. So getting Malachi Dupree and Chris Godwin in this year's draft class is what I think would be on his plan of things to do. Jumping to the 5th round pick, 149. I've been going with a nickel corner speedster. William Likely, the defensive back from Maryland, 5'7", 180 pounds. Put up 15 reps on the bench press, which is fairly impressive for a guy of his size. But it's the speed, man. William Likely, everyone knows he's a burner. I don't think he ran. I'm surprised he didn't run. I thought he ran a 40 at the combine. But this guy here, William Likely, your nickel corner, your big-time playmaking corner. Guy had a bunch of plays. I remember against UCF, he had 15-some tackles. It was incredible. He was playing all over the place. He could play inside, he could play outside. But in the NFL, let's be honest, he is going to be a guy that is got to play on the outside. His NFL comparison is Tavon Young, who had one hell of a season last year for the Baltimore Ravens. So if you could put him in as a nickel corner, really competitive guy, really aggressive, special teamer, slot corner, anything like that, I think that could compete, especially if LaMarcus Joyner is moving to a safety spot, or at least they want to have competition there. I think the spot here for a nickel corner has opened up a little bit, or at least competition has, and William Likely in the 5th round. Add another great defensive back for Wade Phillips back there to use. Jumping to the 6th round, pick 189. We're going with a tight end that slipped. He's a guy that really did improve his draft stock, and I could see him going a little bit higher. But this is how my board played out. I've been getting George Kittle, the tight end from Iowa, 6'4", 245 pounds, ran a 4.5 240, 18 reps on the bench press. Really, really good combine. NFL comparison on NFL.com was Charles Clay, who is very productive for the Buffalo Bills. I think, again, just in case, I personally do believe that Tyler Higbee can be a good starting tight end. But they do run a lot of 2 tight end sets from time to time. So I think with a guy like George Kittle, who's a primary receiver, not a phenomenal run blocker at anything, but he has the ability, he has the willingness, and he can learn the technique, and he's a good set of hands on him. So I think in the 6th round, you can get another guy, mid to late round, somewhat similar to what Higbee was, And, you could do some damn damage here with your 2 tight end sets. Because right now, you got Cody Harkey. I don't know if they're necessarily going to be running a lot of fullback, or they're going to classify him as a tight end or whatever. But if Tamarick Hemingway is getting starting snaps as the backup tight end, I think a guy like George Kittle has a little bit more upside. And I'd feel a little bit more comfortable with that being my 2 tight end set. Jumping to the second 6th-round pick 206, either going with Sean Harlow, the offensive guard from Oregon State, 6'4", 305 pounds, 5'1", 540, 26 reps on the bench press. Had a pretty good vertical. I think, he's more so a serviceable backup that can swing between center and guard on the interior. More versatility to bring to continue to bulk up on the offensive line. Again, not even necessarily a tackle, which could be the position of need, but I just think you continue to add some depth, some affordable depth at the offensive line spot, and he was the best offensive lineman still on the board in the 6th round. And again, best thing with late-round offensive linemen is your versatility, and Sean Harlow has that play, being able to play anywhere on the inside. And then finishing up with the 7th-round pick, 234, I've been going with Carroll Phillips. Defensive end would probably be an outside linebacker in a Bum Phillips. And by Bum Phillips, I mean Wade Phillips scheme. 6'3", 245 pounds, ran a 4.6, 440, 23 reps on the bench press. I think what you have to worry about him is, very productive season last year at the University of Illinois. Got coached up fairly good by Lovie Smith, who was there last year. I think last season he had 56 tackles, 20 tackles for loss at 9 sacks. So very productive. The only issue is that he's not particularly elite in terms of athleticism. But that's another guy that a player like, or a coach, like Wade Phillips can be able to utilize and get the most of. 7th round, I think a guy with Carroll Phillips' ability could probably slot in nicely behind Connor Barwin, which is currently as, on our lads. No one else there on the depth chart between Connor Barwin. You got Robert Quinn. He's not a natural outside linebacker by any means. So add more competition for guys that are maybe a little bit better at doing that. And I think someone like Carroll Phillips at least could be able to compete for a roster spot here in the 7th round. So there you go, guys. That's my 7th round mock draft for the LA Rams. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. If you're a Rams fan and this is your first time stopping by and you enjoyed, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. 100 likes, and we're going to finish out this series tomorrow with the Minnesota Vikings. So I hope you guys stay tuned for that. And until next time, it's C4 saying peace out.